The chamber was massive, built to impress and intimidate. Jinho stood in the center of the circular floor, alone. Above him, holographic projections of 12 different alien species looked down from their elevated positions. Some had multiple eyes, others had forms that barely held a solid shape. The crystalline being that led the council reflected light in 1,000 different colors as it moved. Jinho had been standing there for 3 hours. They made him wait. It was a power play, something humans understood very well. He didn't fidget or show impatience. He simply stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking up at them with calm eyes. Finally, the council leader spoke. Its voice came through translators, mechanical and cold. Human Ambassador Jinho of Earth, this council has observed your species for 73 of your years. We have watched your expansion with growing concern. What you have done in mere decades takes other species centuries. This is not natural. This is not safe. Jinho said nothing. He had learned that silence made people uncomfortable. Let them talk. Let them reveal their hand. Another being spoke, this one resembling a floating mass of tentacles with bioluminescent patterns. Your species has a history of violence. You have fought over 200 major wars on your homeworld. You created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet before you even left its surface. You are reckless. You are dangerous. A third voice joined in, this one from a reptilian species with metallic scales. The Cavrathi Empire has seen species like yours before. Young, aggressive, convinced of their own importance. They always bring chaos. They always threaten the order we have built over 10,000 years. The accusations continued. One by one, different council members listed humanity's crimes. Too many weapons. Too much expansion. Too little respect for established protocols. Too quick to anger. Too slow to listen. The list went on and on. Jinho waited until they finished. The silence stretched for a full minute before he spoke. His voice was steady, not loud, but it carried through the chamber. Are you done? The council leader's crystalline form shifted, surprised at the directness. We are presenting the facts that led to our decision? Facts, Jinho repeated. You call them facts. Let me tell you what I see. I see 12 species who are comfortable, who have divided the galaxy among themselves, who don't like it when someone new shows up and doesn't ask permission to exist. The reptilian delegate hissed. You dare to? Yes, Jinho interrupted. I dare. Because that's what humans do. We dare. We don't accept that something is impossible just because someone else says so. We don't bow just because someone has a bigger ship. And we certainly don't stop existing just because it makes you uncomfortable. The council leader raised one crystalline appendage. Enough. We did not bring you here for debate. We brought you here to deliver our decision. Humanity will cease all expansion beyond the planet you call Mars. You will dismantle your military vessels. You will submit to council oversight and monitoring. You have 1 galactic standard year to comply with these terms. Jinho smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had expected exactly this. And if we refuse? Then we will enforce compliance, the Cavrathi delegate said. Our armadas will enter your system. Your colonies will be dismantled. Your people will be restricted to your homeworld until you learn to follow galactic law. Galactic law, Jinho said softly. The law you wrote. The law that benefits you. The law that keeps new species under your control. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or eye equivalents of each delegate. Tell me something. Did anyone ask you for permission when you first left your homeworlds? Did anyone tell you that you were too dangerous, too young, too unpredictable? No one answered. I thought not, Jinho continued. You all did what you wanted. You all expanded. You all built weapons. And now that you're comfortable, now that you've carved up the galaxy, you want to pull up the ladder. You want to make sure no one else can do what you did. The tentacle being pulsed with angry colors. We have a responsibility to maintain order, to prevent chaos. Your species represents a threat to the stability we have built. Stability, Jinho said. Is that what you call it? I looked at your records. In the past 1,000 years, the Council has absorbed 47 new species. Absorbed. That's your word, not mine. Do you want to know how many of those species joined voluntarily? Silence. 5. Jinho answered his own question. 5 species joined willingly. The other 42 were given the same choice you're giving us. Submit or be contained. That's not a galactic council. That's an empire that doesn't want to admit what it is. The council leader's form grew brighter, a sign of agitation. This is not a negotiation. This is not a debate. We have made our decision. You will comply or face the consequences. Jinho nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data device. He held it up so they could all see it. This contains Earth's official response to your demands. I'm going to play it now. I want you to listen very carefully. He activated the device. A voice filled the chamber, speaking in clear English with translation running simultaneously. It was the voice of Earth's Secretary General, a woman named Haijin, who had survived 3 wars before becoming a diplomat. To the Galactic Council, the recording began. We have received your demands. We have considered them carefully. Our answer is no. We will not stop expanding. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not submit to your authority. Not because we want war. Not because we seek conflict. But because we learned long ago that freedom is not something others give you. It's something you take and hold on to with everything you have. The recording continued. You see our weapons and call us dangerous. You see our expansion and call us reckless. But let me tell you what we see. We see species that have forgotten what it means to struggle, that have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. You've been comfortable for so long that you think comfort is the natural state of things. It's not. Survival is the natural state. Everything else is what you build on top of it. Jinho watched the council members as they listened. Some were angry. Some were confused. A few looked almost thoughtful. The recording reached its conclusion. So here is our warning to you. Not a threat. A warning. Do not mistake our restraint for weakness. Do not confuse our desire for peace with inability to fight. And most importantly, do not make the mistake of trying to cage us. Because once you do, once you cross that line, there is no going back. You will not like what happens next. This is not arrogance. This is not bravado. This is a simple statement of fact. We are human. We do not kneel. The recording ended. The chamber was silent. Jinho pocketed the device. You have your answer. You have 1 galactic standard year to decide what you're going to do about it. I suggest you choose wisely. He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, voices erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate action. Others urged caution. A few asked questions that had no easy answers. Jinho didn't look back. He had delivered his message. Now it was up to them to decide how badly they wanted this. Fight. As the door closed behind him, he allowed himself a moment of genuine emotion. Fear. Not for himself, but for what was coming. He had just told the most powerful alliance in the galaxy that humanity would rather fight than submit. There was no going back from that. His personal communicator chimed. A message from Earth. Just 2 words. Well done. Jinho took a deep breath and headed for his ship. The countdown had begun. War was coming. The only question was whether the council realized what they were about to unleash. 6 months had passed since Jinho delivered Earth's refusal. The Council expected humanity to reconsider. They expected fear to set in. They expected Earth to send another ambassador, this time with apologies and acceptance. Instead, human activity increased. Mining operations around the asteroid belt doubled their output. Shipyards near Jupiter's moons worked constantly, their lights visible from millions of kilometers away. Supply convoys moved between Mars and Earth in steady streams. To the Council's surveillance systems, it looked like humanity was preparing for something. Captain Myray stood on the bridge of the EDF Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. It wasn't actually that large compared to Council vessels, but humans had learned to build efficiently. Every meter of space served a purpose. Every system had backups. Nothing was wasted. She was 42 years old, had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years, and had never fired a shot in anger. The wars of her grandmother's generation were history now. Humanity had been at peace for decades. But peace, she knew, was always temporary. Captain, her sensor officer called out. We're detecting jump signatures. Multiple contacts. Distance. 3 astronomical units and closing. Myray felt her stomach tighten. How many? Counting. 200.250. 300 confirmed contacts. Configuration matches Council warship profiles. Multiple species. This is it, Captain. This is the enforcement fleet. Around the bridge, her crew and silent. 300 warships. Against humanity's entire defense force of maybe 50 combat-ready vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Send to all Earth Defense Force ships, Myray said calmly. Battle stations. Assume defensive positions. Do not, I repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. Execute Protocol Watchful Eye. Yes, Captain, her communications officer replied. Protocol Watchful Eye. It meant observe, record, and wait. Every human ship carried sensor equipment that would document everything the Council fleet did. If this turned into a war, Earth wanted the galaxy to see exactly how it started. The Council fleet moved into formation with practiced precision. They arranged themselves in a spherical pattern around Mars, weapons systems charging. The planet's 2 million colonists had built cities under protective domes, farms in underground caverns, and a life that was hard but free. Now they were in the crosshairs of an alien armada. Myray watched her displays as the enemy fleet took position. Something felt wrong. She had studied every bit of intelligence Earth had on Council military doctrine. This formation was standard for planetary assault. But something about it bothered her. Get me a tactical overlay of Mars colony positions, she ordered. Her tactical officer brought up the display. Red dots marked every major settlement, every dome cluster, every industrial facility. Myray stared at it, her mind racing. Captain, her first officer said quietly. The colonies are empty. Myray's head snapped around. What? I've been monitoring civilian traffic. It's gone. All of it. Every civilian ship, every transport, every mining vessel. They're not there anymore. When did they evacuate? Myray pulled up the logs. Her eyes widened. Over the past week, small groups at a time. They scattered to predetermined coordinates in the outer system. She looked at her first officer. Mars isn't defended. It's bait. Before anyone could respond, the Council fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced down from 300 ships, hitting domes and facilities across Mars. The attacks were precise, targeted at infrastructure. The Council wanted to break human capability, not commit genocide. They were trying to be measured, but something strange happened. The structures didn't explode. They didn't shatter or collapse. Instead, they absorbed the energy. Every dome, every facility lit up with a bright blue glow as massive capacitors stored the incoming fire. What the hell? Murray's tactical officer whispered. The Council fleet seemed confused too. They increased fire intensity. More energy poured into the empty colony. The glow grew brighter. Then Mars responded from hundreds of hidden locations across the planet's surface. Weapons emerged. Not missile silos or conventional artillery. Something new. Something the Council had never seen before. Electromagnetic pulse cannons, powered by fusion reactors buried deep underground. Particle beam projectors that had been built in pieces. Over 50 years, assembled in secret, hidden in plain sight as mining equipment or industrial machinery. The first salvo from Mars caught the Council fleet completely off guard. Beams of concentrated energy, far more powerful than any ship-mounted weapon, tore through Council shields. Ships that had been in service for centuries, that had fought in a dozen wars, simply ceased to exist. Others tumbled out of formation, their systems fried by electromagnetic pulses. Murray watched in horror and awe as the planet itself became a weapon. The energy the Council had poured into the empty colonies was now being redirected, amplified, and fired back at them. It was brilliant and terrifying. The Council fleet tried to retreat, but their formation was wrong. They had arranged themselves to attack the planet, putting themselves in overlapping fields of fire from multiple hidden installations. Every direction they turned, another weapon came online. "Captain," her communications officer said, voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission from Mars Defense Command. They're requesting we hold position and observe. They say they have this handled. Who is in command down there?" Murray asked. "According to the transmission, no one we've heard of. The base commander is someone named Dae-Yun, a civil engineer who's been on Mars for 30 years. An engineer, not a soldier. Humanity had put a construction specialist in charge of the most devastating defensive system ever built. It made a strange kind of sense. Who better to turn a planet into a fortress than someone who knew how to build? The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 47 minutes. The Council fleet broke formation and fled. Of 300 ships, 47 escaped. The rest were debris, adding new metal rings to Mars's orbit. Murray's bridge was silent. Everyone stared at their screens, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Earth had built this, over decades, under the Council's surveillance. Hidden it all in plain sight. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "what do we do now?" Murray took a deep breath. "We do our job. We document everything. We make sure every ship, every station, every human colony knows what happened here. The Council thought they could intimidate us. They thought overwhelming force would make us submit." She looked at the debris field that had been an alien armada. They were wrong. A new transmission came through, this time on an open channel that every ship in the system could hear. It was from Earth Command, from the Secretary General herself. "To all Council forces, leave our system now. This was your warning shot. We did not start this fight, but we will finish it if you force us to. Every human colony, every station, every outpost has similar defenses. Mars was not special. Mars was not unique. Mars was the example. Learn from it or become another debris field. The choice is yours." Murray watched as the surviving Council ships jumped out of the system. They left their dead behind, thousands of crew members who would never go home. She felt no joy in their deaths, only a grim satisfaction that Earth's message had been delivered in terms the Council could understand. "All ships, stand down from battle stations," she ordered. "Maintain alert status. Send rescue teams to recover any survivors from the Council fleet." Her first officer looked shocked. "Captain, they just tried to destroy a colony." "They did," Murray agreed, "and we beat them. Now we show them the difference between us and them. We don't leave people to die in space, even enemies." especially enemies we might need to talk to later. As her crew moved to execute her orders, Myray pulled up the casualty reports from Mars. 0 human deaths. The evacuation had been complete, perfect, executed with a precision that spoke of years of planning. Earth had known this day would come. They had prepared for it, not because they wanted war, but because they understood something the Council had forgotten. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The question now was what the Council would do next. Would they learn? Would they recognize that humanity could not be bullied into submission? Or would they double down, send an even larger fleet, and force a war that would devastate both sides? Myray looked at the tactical display at the debris field where 300 ships had been and felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. The Council would not learn. They would escalate. And when they did, humanity would be ready. They always were. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. Gone was the certainty, the comfortable arrogance that had defined it for thousands of years. The delegates sat in their elevated positions, but their postures were different. Tense, uncertain, afraid. 300 ships, gone, destroyed by a species they had considered primitive, by a planet, not even a fleet. The news had spread across Council space like wildfire. Some species called it a disaster. Others called it a warning that should have been heeded. A few called it what it was, a humiliation. Dr. Soman stood in the center of the chamber, in the same spot where Jinho had delivered Earth's refusal 6 months earlier. But she was not there as an ambassador. She was there as an expert, someone who had spent her entire life studying alien species and how they thought. Now she was going to explain humans to beings who thought they already understood. The Council. Leader's crystalline form was dim, lacking its usual brilliance. Dr. Soman, you are here to help us understand what happened. How your species possessed weapons we did not know existed. How you deceived our surveillance for so long. Soman shook her head. That's not the right question. The question you should be asking is why you didn't see it. Why you looked at humanity and saw what you expected to see instead of what was actually there. The Cavathi delegate hissed. We saw a violent species, a dangerous species. Events have proven us correct. Have they? Soman asked calmly. Your fleet attacked first. Your ships fired on our colony. We responded. That's not violence. That's self-defense. There's a difference. She pulled up a holographic display. Images filled the air above her. Scenes from Earth's history. Let me teach you about humans. Let me show you what you missed. The first image showed prehistoric humans, small and vulnerable, surrounded by predators. We evolved on a death world. Everything on our planet was bigger than us, stronger than us, faster than us. Predators could smell us from kilometers away. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We should have gone extinct. The images changed, showing humans making tools, fire, weapons. But we didn't. Because we had something the predators didn't. We could think. We could plan. We could work together. We learned to make weapons from stones and sticks. We learned to use fire to keep the darkness away. We learned that being weak meant we had to be smart. More images. Wars, disasters, plagues. Our history is not peaceful. You're right about that. We fought each other constantly. But every war taught us something. Every disaster made us adapt. Every plague that should have killed us made the survivors stronger. Soman walked slowly around the chamber, making eye contact with each delegate. You know what the most important thing we learned was? Never trust someone else to guarantee your safety. Never put your survival in another's hands. Never assume that because someone is stronger, they'll be fair. She pulled up new images. Nuclear weapons. Massive bombs that could level cities. We split the atom before we left our planet. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world. You see that as madness. We see it as necessity, because we knew that one day we might meet someone out here who would try to destroy us. And we wanted to make sure that if that day came, we could make them regret it. The tentacled delegate pulsed with agitation. You admit to building weapons of mass destruction. This proves our point. You are dangerous. Every species here has weapons of mass destruction, Soman countered. Your ships can crack planets. Your bombs can sterilize atmospheres. The difference is that you built them after you felt safe, after you controlled your territory. We built ours when we were still vulnerable, because we understood something you forgot. The strong prey on the weak unless the weak can make it too costly. She changed the display again. This time it showed human philosophy, strategy, military doctrine. Let me introduce you to some human thinkers. Sun Tzu, who lived 2,500 years ago. He wrote, "All warfare is based on deception. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak." Clausewitz, who said, "War is the continuation of politics by other means." Von Moltke, who taught us that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So you need backup plans for your backup plans. The council delegates listened in silence. Some seemed interested. Others were clearly disturbed. Mars wasn't a secret weapon, Soman explained. It was a test. We wanted to know if you would actually attack a colony of 2 million civilians. We wanted to see if your talk of measured force and peacekeeping was real or just words. You failed that test. Your ships opened fire on what you thought were defenseless cities. You were willing to kill millions to make a point. The council leaders' form brightened, anger showing through. We targeted infrastructure, not civilians. You didn't know the civilians were gone, Soman said flatly. You thought you were attacking an occupied colony. You were willing to accept civilian casualties to enforce your will. That tells us everything we need to know about your council and your laws. She pulled up the final set of images. Every human colony, every station, every outpost. You want to know the truth? Mars was the weakest of our defensive positions. Every colony has similar systems. Some are stronger. We've had 50 years to prepare. 50 years of watching you ignore us, underestimate us, assume we would never dare to resist. That was your mistake. The Kavathi delegate stood, his metallic scales rattling with rage. This is unacceptable. You are one species against 12. We have thousands of ships. We have armadas that have conquered entire star systems. You cannot win a war against the Council. Soman smiled sadly. You still don't understand. We don't need to win. We just need to make losing too expensive for you. How many ships are you willing to lose? How many soldiers are you willing to sacrifice? How many years are you willing to spend fighting a species that will never surrender? She walked back to the center of the chamber. Let me tell you a story. 200 years ago, a small nation on Earth fought the most powerful empire in the world. The empire had better weapons, more soldiers, more resources. Everyone said the small nation would lose. They fought for 20 years. The empire lost. Not because they were beaten on the battlefield, but because the cost of winning became too high. Because the small nation refused to quit. Because they understood that you don't need to defeat your enemy. You just need to make them decide you're not worth the effort. The chamber was silent. Soman could see the understanding dawning on some faces. Others still looked defiant, convinced that overwhelming force could solve any problem. Here's what's going to happen, Soman said. You're going to mobilize a bigger fleet. You're going to tell yourselves that Mars was a fluke, that humans just got lucky, that next time will be different. And you'll attack again. And we'll fight again. And you'll lose more ships, more lives, more time. And eventually, someone in this chamber is going to ask the question you should be asking right now. Why are we doing this? She pulled up a map of human space. Small, insignificant compared to Council territory. We don't want your worlds. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to live free. We want to explore, to build, to grow. If you let us, we could be your allies. We could share technology. We could help you. But if you insist on making us submit, if you insist on controlling us, then we'll fight. And we'll keep fighting until one of us is dead, or you finally understand that we mean what we say. The council leader dinned further, a sign of deep thought. You present us with an impossible choice. If we allow you to defy our laws, other species will do the same. Our authority will collapse. But if we fight you, the cost will be too high, Soman finished. Yes, that's the point. That's what deterrence means. We make the cost of attacking us higher than any possible benefit. That's how we survived on our death world. That's how we survived our own history. And that's how we'll survive you. A new voice spoke, one that hadn't been heard before. It came from one of the smaller species, an aquatic being whose form shimmered in its containment field. Perhaps we have been approaching this incorrectly. We assumed humanity needed to be controlled because they are different. But perhaps their difference is not a threat. Perhaps it is what the council has been missing. The Cavrathi delegate turned on the speaker. You would appease them? After they destroyed our fleet? They destroyed a fleet that attacked them first, the aquatic being responded calmly. There is a difference. I suggest we consider Dr. Summon's words carefully. Sometimes the strongest position is knowing when not to fight. Arguments erupted across the chamber. Some delegates demanded war. Others counseled caution. A few suggested opening real negotiations, treating humans as equals, rather than subjects to be managed. Soman watched it all, knowing that her words had planted seeds of doubt. Not enough to stop what was coming. The hardliners would win this round. They would send their grand fleet. They would try one more time to put humanity in its place, but she had given the moderates something to work with. She had shown them that humans weren't monsters. They were survivors. And sometimes, survivors made the best allies. As she left the chamber, she sent a message back to Earth. They will attack again. Bigger fleet, soon. But we have some support now. A few of them are starting to think. Not enough to stop the war, but maybe enough to end it when the time comes. The response came quickly from Secretary General Haijin. Then we prepare for round 2, and we make sure they remember this lesson even better than the first. Commander Taejun stood in the war room, buried 3 kilometers beneath Earth's surface. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing the approaching council fleet. 5,000 ships, 6 different species, all committed to ending humanity's defiance once and for all. He was 51 years old, had gray hair and old scars from a mining accident in his youth. He had never wanted to be a military commander. He had been a commercial ship pilot, running cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. But when Earth needed someone who understood space combat, not from theory, but from actually living in space, they had drafted him. That was 5 years ago. Now he commanded Earth's entire military response. 5,000 ships, his second-in-command said quietly. We have 200, maybe 250 if we count everything that can mount a weapon. I know the numbers, Taejun replied. He studied the displays, watching the enemy fleet advance. They were being careful this time. No tight formations. They were spread out, making it impossible to trap them like Mars had done. They had learned from their mistake. Do we activate the colony defenses? His second asked. Taejun shook his head. Not yet. They'll expect that. They'll be ready for static defenses this time. We need a different approach. He pulled up a tactical map of the solar system. Human ships were scattered across it, small groups hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, in the shadow of planets. They looked random, but they weren't. Every position had been carefully chosen. "We're not going to fight them head-on," Taejun announced. "We can't win that way. Instead, we're going to make them chase us. We're going to make them angry. We're going to make them split their forces. And then we're going to make them regret coming here." His staff looked uncertain. One officer spoke up. "Commander, with respect, guerrilla tactics work when you have somewhere to hide. Space is empty. They can track us everywhere. Can they?" Taejun pulled up sensor data. "Space is big. Really big. Even with advanced sensors, there are blind spots. Asteroid fields create sensor shadows. Gas giants interfere with tracking. And we know this system better than they do. We've been living here our whole lives. They just got here." He began issuing orders. Every human ship received specific instructions. No one was to engage the main fleet. Instead, they would strike supply lines, hit scout ships, attack isolated groups. Make the enemy paranoid. Make them see threats everywhere. The Council fleet entered the solar system with confidence. They had numbers. They had power. They had learned from Mars. This time would be different. The first attack came from an asteroid field near Jupiter. 3 human ships appeared, fired missiles at a Council supply convoy, and vanished before the escorts could respond. The missiles were old-fashioned, primitive by Council standards. But they were effective against unshielded cargo vessels. The second attack hit a scout group near Saturn. Human fighters emerged from the rings, used them as cover, destroyed 2 Council ships, and disappeared. The enemy sent reinforcements, but by the time they arrived, the humans were gone. Taejin watched the reports come in. Every attack was minor. Every loss was small. But they were adding up. More importantly, they were forcing the Council to react, to split their forces, to spread out trying to cover everything at once. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet. They're demanding we face them in open battle. They're calling us cowards." Taejin smiled grimly. "Tell them we'll be happy to face them in open battle, right after they leave our solar system. Until then, we'll fight on our terms, not theirs." The harassment continued for 3 weeks. Human ships struck everywhere and nowhere. The Council fleet grew frustrated. Their commander, a Kavrathi admiral, decided to force the issue. He sent a significant portion of his fleet to attack Mars directly, reasoning that humans would have to defend their largest colony. Taejin watched the enemy fleet approach Mars and felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment. The fleet was committed, moving too fast to easily turn back. Now he had to play the hand he had been holding back. "Activate Protocol Exodus," he ordered. Across human space, something impossible happened. Ships that had been listed as under construction for years suddenly launched. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of ships, all moving at once. Each one carrying 10,000 people, complete life support, manufacturing equipment, genetic banks, data archives. Everything humanity would need to start over. They scattered in every direction. Some headed for the outer system. Others angled toward deep space. A few even set course for nearby star systems. Journeys that would take decades, but were possible with the technology humans had developed. The Council fleet detected the launches and faced an impossible decision. Continue the attack on Mars or chase the colony ships. If they ignored the ships, humanity would escape. If they chased the ships, they couldn't catch them all. They tried to do both. The fleet split, some ships continuing toward Mars, while others turned to pursue the colony ships. It was exactly what Taejin wanted. All defensive platforms online, he ordered. Mars, Luna, Earth orbital stations. Everything. Hit them now. The space around Earth's solar system lit up with weapons fire. The Council ships attacking Mars ran to the same defenses that had destroyed their first fleet. But this time, they were ready. They had better shields, different tactics. The battle was brutal and close, but the ships chasing the colony vessels found something worse. The colony ships weren't defenseless transports. Each one had been designed as a warship disguised as a civilian vessel. As the Council ships closed in, the colony ships turned and fought. Not to win, but to delay. To make the pursuit costly, Taejun coordinated the defense from Earth, moving pieces across a three-dimensional chessboard that spanned billions of kilometers. Every decision mattered. Every mistake would cost lives. He felt the weight of it crushing down on him, but kept his voice calm, his orders clear. The battle raged for 2 days. In the end, the Council fleet retreated. They had lost hundreds of ships, thousands of crew members, and they had failed to stop the colony ships. Over 700 vessels had escaped into deep space, but Taejun felt no victory. Earth had lost ships too. Mars had taken damage. Thousands of humans were dead. And worst of all, he knew what he had unleashed. Commander, his second approached quietly. Some of the colony ships are requesting permission to return now that the battle is over. Taejun shook his head. Tell them no. Tell them to keep going. Not all of them, but at least 300 ships need to stay out there, keep heading into deep space. Sir? Because now the Council knows, Taejun explained. They know we can evacuate our entire species. They know that even if they destroy Earth, even if they find every colony in this system, we'll survive. 300 ships scattered across the galaxy, each one carrying everything needed to rebuild humanity. How do you fight that? How do you contain a species that can spread like seeds in the wind? Understanding dawned on his second's face. It's not about winning the battle. It's about making sure we can't lose the war. Exactly, Taejun said. Even if they crack our planets, burn our cities, kill billions of us ... we'll still be out there, growing, building, remembering, and one day, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000, those scattered colonies will be strong enough to come back. That's what we just told the Council. You can hurt us. You can kill us. But you cannot erase us. A new message came through. It was from the Council fleet, from their admiral. A request for ceasefire in negotiations. Taejun read it and felt relief wash over him. They had done it. They had made the cost too high. They had shown the Council that humans could not be contained, but he also felt sadness, because 300 ships full of people, families, children, were now heading into the unknown. They might never see Earth again. They would spend their lives traveling through empty space, building new homes on alien worlds, facing dangers no one could predict. They were exiles. Not because they wanted to leave, but because humanity needed to ensure its survival. It was a price Taejun hoped would be worth it. Send response to the Council fleet, he ordered. We accept the ceasefire. We will negotiate. But the colony ships stay out there. That's not negotiable. They stay out there until we're sure the Council understands that we're serious. Until we're sure that we're safe. As his communications officer sent the message, Taejun looked at the star map showing those 300 ships moving away from everything they knew toward an uncertain future. They were humanity's insurance policy, its backup plan, its promise that no matter what happened, humans would endure. He raised his hand in salute to those distant ships, to the people aboard them who had volunteered for this mission. They were the bravest humans alive, and they would never know if their sacrifice was necessary. That was the price of survival. Sometimes you had to make terrible choices. Sometimes you had to send people into the dark. Sometimes you had to be willing to lose everything to save anything. Teijin understood that now, and he would carry that weight for the rest of his life. 2 years had passed since the ceasefire. The war that no one wanted had ended without a clear winner. The Council had failed to contain humanity. Humanity had paid a heavy price to prove they could not be contained. Now came the harder part. Building something new from the ashes of conflict. Jinho stood in the council chamber once again. But this time, everything was different. The chamber had been redesigned. The elevated positions where council members once looked down on petitioners were gone. Instead, there was a circular table. 13 seats, not 12. The new seat was for Earth. The symbolism was clear. Equals, not subjects. Not members of a lesser species to be managed. Partners in whatever came next. The council leader, the crystalline being who had once delivered ultimatums, now sat across from Jinho at the same level. Its form had changed color over the years, developing darker hues that humans had learned meant contemplation, perhaps regret. Ambassador Jinho, it began. We gather today to formalize what the war has already decided. The Galactic Council extends an invitation to humanity, not as subjects, not as a species to be monitored, but as full members with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Jinho listened carefully. He had helped write this speech during months of negotiations, but hearing it officially mattered. Words had weight. Treaties had power. The Kavarthi delegate, the same one who had pushed hardest for war, spoke next. His voice carried less arrogance than before. We judged your species by your violence and your weapons. We saw only danger. We failed to see your resilience, your determination, your unwillingness to surrender your freedom. These are strengths we should have recognized. These are qualities that could make the Council stronger. Other delegates spoke in turn, some with genuine warmth, others with barely concealed resentment. The aquatic being who had questioned the war from the beginning welcomed humanity with what seemed like true friendship. A few species remained silent, neither supporting nor opposing, waiting to see what humans would do with their new position. When they finished, Jinho stood. He had prepared a speech, but standing there, looking at beings who had tried to crush humanity and now offered partnership, he decided to speak from his heart instead. 2 years ago, I stood in a different version of this chamber. You told me humanity was too dangerous, too young, too unpredictable. You were right about some of that. We are dangerous. Every intelligent species is dangerous. The question is not whether you have the capacity for violence, but whether you have the wisdom to know when to use it and when to hold back. He walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each delegate. You thought overwhelming force would make us submit. You were wrong, but we were wrong too. We thought you were tyrants who only understood strength. Some of you are, but some of you were genuinely trying to maintain order, to prevent chaos, to protect the stability you had built over thousands of years. We didn't see that at first. We only saw the threat. Jinho stopped at his seat, but didn't sit. So here's what we offer. We will join your council. We will share our knowledge, our technology, our perspectives. We will work with you to address real threats, to maintain real peace. But we have conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. The chamber grew tense. Even in victory, even in partnership, humans were making demands. First, Jinho continued, no species will ever again be told they must stop expanding, must dismantle their defenses, must submit to oversight simply because they make you uncomfortable. If a species poses a real threat, if they attack others, if they violate genuine laws, then yes, the Council can act. But not before. Not based on fear of what they might do. Second, Every species has the right to defend themselves as they see fit. You cannot dictate what weapons they can have, what defenses they can build, what measures they take to ensure their survival. You can only judge their actions, not their preparations. Third, the Council must include all species as equals. No more absorbing species who have no choice. No more forcing compliance through threat of isolation or destruction. The Council should be what you always claimed it was. A partnership, not an empire. The Council leaders' form brightened. These conditions, they change the fundamental nature of how the Council has operated for thousands of years. Yes, Jinho agreed. They do, because the old way led to this war. The old way created resentment, fear, and conflict. We're offering you a chance to build something better, but only if you're willing to actually change. Silence filled the chamber. Jinho could see the debate happening behind each delegate's eyes. Change was hard. Letting go of power was harder. But the alternative was more wars, more species resisting, more centuries of conflict. Finally, the aquatic delegate spoke. I believe we should accept these conditions. Not because humanity forces us to, but because they are right. We have maintained order through control. Perhaps it is time to maintain order through cooperation. One by one, other delegates agreed. Some enthusiastically, others reluctantly. The Cavithy delegate was the last to speak. We accept, not because we are defeated, but because we recognize that humanity has shown us a truth we forgot. Freedom must be earned and protected, not granted and controlled. Jinho nodded and sat in Earth's chair. Then let's begin. The years that followed were not easy. Trust had to be rebuilt. Systems had to change. There were setbacks and arguments. Some species left the Council, refusing to accept the new rules. Others joined, drawn by the promise of true partnership. Captain Mireille, now Admiral Mireille, commanded joint operations between human and Council forces. She found herself working alongside species that had once fired on her, fighting new threats together. Pirates who preyed on weak colonies. Rogue AI that threatened entire systems. Even a few extragalactic entities that made everyone realize how small their old conflicts had been. She learned to trust species she had once called enemies. They learned to trust her. It was slow, sometimes painful, but it worked. Dr. Soman established the first interspecies university on a neutral world. Humans and aliens studied together, learned from each other's perspectives, shared knowledge that had been hoarded for millennia. She watched young humans and young aliens form friendships, unaware of the war their parents had fought. That gave her hope for the future. Commander Tajin retired from military service and wrote a series of tactical manuals that became required reading across the galaxy. But his most important work was simpler. He compiled the stories of the 300 colony ships that never returned home. Some had found habitable worlds and thrived. Others had faced disasters and failed. A few were still out there, still traveling, their journey not yet complete. But all of them had volunteered, knowing they might never see Earth again. Their sacrifice ensured humanity's survival. Tajin made sure their names were remembered. Every ship, every colonist. They were honored not as warriors who died in battle, but as pioneers who ventured into the unknown so others could live free. On Earth, in the capital city, they erected a monument. It was simple, a black stone wall with names carved into it. The names of every human who died in the war. Soldiers and civilians, adults and children. They numbered in the tens of thousands. At the bottom of the wall, they carved an inscription in every human language and in the languages of every Council species. They told us to stop. We asked them why. They could not give us a reason worth accepting. So we reminded them, freedom is not granted. It is earned. And once earned, It has never surrendered. Jinho stood before that monument on the anniversary of the ceasefire. He was older now, grayer, carrying the weight of decisions that had cost so many lives. But he did not regret those decisions. He regretted the necessity of them. A young reporter approached him, someone too young to remember the war. "Ambassador, do you think it was worth it? All those deaths, all that destruction, just to prove a point." Jinho looked at the names on the wall. So many names. So many lives ended too soon. We didn't do this to prove a point. We did it to prove our right to exist on our own terms. And yes, it was worth it. Not because we wanted those people to die, but because their sacrifice meant every human born after them would live free. That's worth any price. The reporter persisted. "But couldn't you have negotiated? Couldn't you have found a peaceful solution?" "We tried," Jinho said quietly. "We sent diplomats. We offered compromise. We asked for nothing except the same rights they had. They answered with ultimatums and threats. So we fought, not because we wanted war, but because sometimes the only way to achieve peace is to make war too costly. That's the lesson the galaxy learned from humanity." He turned to face the young reporter directly. "And here's what you need to understand. We are not unique. Humans are not special. We're just a species that refused to accept that someone else had the right to control our destiny. Any species could do what we did. Any species could stand up and say no. We were just the first in a long time to actually mean it." The reporter took notes, perhaps understanding, perhaps not. Jinho didn't mind. The young needed to ask questions. They needed to challenge assumptions. That's how societies stayed healthy, stayed free. As the sun set over Earth, Jinho looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, 300 colony ships were building new homes. Somewhere out there, human and alien children were studying together, learning that their differences made them stronger. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was becoming something better than it had been. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. There would be more conflicts, more challenges, more difficult choices. But now, at least, they would face those challenges as partners rather than as masters and subjects. Earth had sent its final warning to the Galactic Council. Too late to stop humanity. But it had also sent a message of hope. Not too late to join us. Not too late to build something worth protecting together. The galaxy had listened. And in listening, it had changed. That, Jinho thought as he walked away from the monument, was worth all the sacrifices, all the pain, all the losses. Because in the end, they had not just won their freedom. They had shown others that freedom was possible. And that was a victory that would echo through the stars for generations to come.